Welcome to episode 17 of Be in the Room, How to Stop Shrinking and How to Start Leading with Purpose. This is a 20-part series that I have been doing for the entire month of January to give you the tools and strategies that I use with leaders, that I use with my clients, that I use with C-suite leaders and to build high-performing teams, giving you these tools so that you can navigate to your next level of success, so that you can navigate not only the rooms that you're in, but you can elevate to the rooms that you want to be in. This whole series has been about the fact that success is often seen as what you do, how hard you work, the kind of credentials that you have, the level of schooling that you have. But what we're finding out what I hope that you are learning through this series is that success is not just about individual drive, talent, and strategy, but it's also about how we interact with others that is so important. How we understand our own emotional landscape and how we use that as information and data to strategically interact with other people. It can be the difference between the person who is owning the room and the other person who is shrinking in the corner, right? So today we are going to talk all about givers and takers. Now, the theory that I'm going to be bringing forward to you today is actually from a book by Adam Grant called Givers and Takers. And this is a really powerful model that helps people to really understand how they show up in the rooms that they are currently in and how to identify where they may need to tweak how they're interacting with others in order to create a more powerful presence. And not just a powerful presence, but a presence that has resonance, a presence that offers resilience, a presence that essentially allows you to build on your success without burning out. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get there, let's say hello to some folks. Let's say good morning. All right, so we've got Susan. Good morning. Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Layla. You were able to join us today. Hey, Leslie. Jitterix here. Tom is here. Trishan, of course, is here. You're not late. You are not late. There's a grace period. And what you missed in the intro, you can bring forward. Now, just a quick reminder. Well, by the way, we got markers today. Markers means that we're going to break some shit down. I'm going to be able to show you visually the model that you can be looking at to figure out. And I want you to be thinking about, where are you on the model? Where are you on the model? Where do you strive to be? And I'll show you where most high achievers actually end up on this model from a givers and takers perspective, and some of the misconceptions that cause them to burn out despite their brilliance, despite their drive, despite their ambition. What we're really lacking here is strategy and boundaries, which is what is causing us to burn out quickly. And question, do we even want to be in leadership? Question, maybe we're not built for the rooms that we're currently in. Question, do I even want to go up to the next level if the level that I'm currently at is burning me out? If the level that this is the thing that I hear all the time. If the level that I'm currently at has me feeling so burnt out and depleted, why would I go to the next level? Why would I take on more responsibility? Why would I take on higher levels of leadership or own new parts of the room? And I'm going to show you how you can do that, but shed some of the habits and behaviors and mindsets that have kept you on this level, burning out and questioning your ability to reach beyond that ceiling. Okay? All right. Now, yesterday we talked all about, because this whole week is all about, this is the final week. So this whole week is all about owning your place in the room. It's talking about integration, it's talking about influence, and it's talking about presence. And yesterday we talked about the power of the pause. So before we get into anything, I'm going to invite you all to practice the pause with me. So we're going to take a pause before we dive into this next theory, before we dive into this next model. And maybe this is the only pause that you take in your day. But if you're here with me, I want to invite you to just pause and just take a moment to think to yourself, where am I right now? What's coming up for me right now? What is it that is bringing me to this live today? What has had me showing up for all the ones that I have shown up? And what is it that I really want to get out of this session? What do I want to walk away with? What am I looking for? So I'm just going to give you a few seconds to pause. Okay, now we've built in some intention. All right, so let's break some shit down. All right, so again, today's theory is all about givers, takers, is understanding what is the difference between givers and takers. And again, not just talking about our own personal drive, talent, and strategy, but also really focusing on how we interact with others as the difference between ownership in the room and as the difference between, what do you call it? Resilience in the room as well. All right. So let's move over to the whiteboard. And by the way, while I'm moving over, just a reminder that if you have been tuning into this series, oh my gosh, that a lot of what we're covering in this series is covered in my book, Be in the Room, How to Stop Shrinking and Start Leading with Purpose. If you haven't purchased your copy yet, you can go ahead and type book into the space below and you will get a link to order your copy. All right, and then you can go deeper on some of these models. And of course, the model that I'm showing you today, you are absolutely invited to go deeper with Adam Grant in his book, Givers and Takers. If you're a person who is a leadership or a reading junkie, then add that one to your list. It's absolutely great. All right, so let's break this down. Let's talk about the givers, okay? So when you think about, you can't even see that. Where are we? Here we go. All right. So givers, I won't write out the whole word because you know what it says and you know that it's backwards. Okay. So when we think about a giver, what is it that comes to mind for you? Oftentimes, the giver is the person who will help generously with others and expect no immediate return on that give. So they will offer their time, they will offer their energy, and they will provide their knowledge freely. Okay. So a giver is someone who gives without the expectation of immediate return. Okay. Now, this is the person who is kind of thinking to themselves, what's in it for them? How can I provide value to somebody else? That is what a giver's mentality is. Now, just to kind of, I'm curious for even any of you just sitting here listening to this, so thinking, how much do you identify with being a giver, right? On the other end of the spectrum, we have the takers, okay? Now, while a giver is over here asking, what's in it for you? The taker is over here saying, what's in it for me? These are the people who are a bit more opportunistic in a sense that they are prioritizing their own gain, often at another person's expense. Okay? They extract value from people and from situations as much as they possibly can. They often they're basically they're constantly prioritizing, but what's in it for me? What can you do for me? Right? So that's what a taker is. Now, you might be sitting here and you might be thinking to yourself either I identify as being a taker, or you're sitting here and being like, I can name a bunch of takers in my life right now, whether it's at work or in personal life. This is what this might be the scale that you're looking at. Or you might be like a lot of people who say, maybe I'm a bit of both, right? In a sense of, I don't necessarily give freely without any expectation of any return down the line, and I don't take just for the sake of my own benefit. But maybe what I am is in the middle, which is a matcher, right? So in the middle, we have matchers who operate on fairness and reciprocity. Think about these people as you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, kind of a quid pro quo kind of thing. They give, but they expect a return, and maybe they're keeping score, right? So if you're thinking about where in the areas of your life are you keeping score? You know, how often you pay for dinner, how much you do within the workplace, where it's kind of coming back for you. So even thinking about situations where you're maybe giving freely, maybe there are situations where you are taking, and maybe there are situations where you are really just looking for a match, right? Now, the big question, now I'm curious, just even listening to these, where do you feel that you fall on this scale most times? Do you mostly identify as the giver? Do you mostly identify as the taker? Or do you mostly identify as the matcher? And I'm curious just to see your thoughts come up in the chat here. No judgment, no shame on any of them. They've all got their strengths, they've all got their weaknesses, but just kind of check in with yourself. Like, where am I on this scale? Okay, givers. Okay, so giver at this point. The matcher. Okay, awesome. All right. My youth, more of a taker, now balancing out to be more of a giver, somewhere between G and M. Right, so there's like shades of this, right? Okay. So now let's talk about the givers, the takers, the matchers, and performance, right? So along this axis here, I'm going to move it over. This axis here, we have the number of people. And on this axis here, we have, this axis here, we have performance. This axis here, we have number of people. Now, what people have found, what studies have found, or what Adam Grant reveals in his book, is that essentially people fall around this scale, right? In a sense that, actually, no, this is number and this is performance. So in a sense that most people are falling in the category of here of takers and matchers. Most people are here, right? Now, what you are also seeing on this scale of performance now, right? So this is low performance and this is high performance. What you're noticing is that many of the people in the takers and matchers, they're entering the mid-level of performance. The question I have for you is, where do you think the givers are? Now, the interesting thing about a giver, just by nature, is that when most people assume who are the highest performers when it comes to givers and matchers and takers, people often assume that the takers are the higher performers, right? Because they are opportunistic, because they are looking for what's in it themselves, and because sometimes when we think about people who are leading the charge, we have so many examples of toxic leaders, right? Of people who are maybe highly successful from the outside, but have built toxic environments by being takers. Now, the thing that here is that takers can be very charismatic, but they can often rise very fast, but they can flame out due to trust erosion. So even think about the takers in your mind and why they stay on the mid-level of performance is because, again, they'll get where they want to go quickly, but without the trust, without the relationships, with eroding some of the relationships along the way, they will get stuck at a point of performance and even find themselves decreasing in performance. Similar thing with the matchers. They often maintain balance in a team, but struggle to scale their influence. So again, because they're always looking for the match, it is harder for them to actually scale their influence and rise further. That being said, now where do the givers land? Now, most people would believe that the givers are on the lower end of the performance, that someone who gives without expectation is potentially someone who's driving lower performance or who isn't as respected in the workplace and therefore driving lower performance. Now, here's the kicker. Givers are actually correctly at the lowest end of performance, and they are also at the highest end of performance. Okay, so givers, lowest in performance, highest in performance. Now, what do you think is the difference between this giver who is at the low end of performance and this giver who is at the highest end of performance? Let me see if anyone knows. What we find is that the givers on this end, they give to their own detriment. They give without discretion. They give without boundaries. They give without regard to their own well-being or to their own goals and missions, right? Absolutely different mindset. Again, these givers give to the detriment of themselves. These givers are what we call strategic givers, in a sense where they recognize the value that they bring, and if they spread it out across anyone, everywhere, all at once, then essentially they are eroding their impact, they are eroding their focus, they are eroding their own well-being, right? So that's why strategic givers are at the higher end of performance, because what these people, the common pitfalls, especially, and a lot of high achievers will fall into this category, especially as they're looking to rise up, is because these givers are the ones who often experience burnout from over-functioning, right? They experience burnout because they want to be seen as a team player. They want to be seen as the go-to person. They want to be seen as the one who is reliable in the organization. And that reliability, that go-to, that can often cause people to burn out from over-functioning. They over-function, they under-communicate their boundaries, so they often get taken advantage of, and they over-deliver in the hopes of being validated. In other words, these people are going at it hard in hopes that people will recognize their value, in hopes that people will recognize their worth, in hopes that people will provide them with recognition. But essentially what ends up happening is, because they're not advocating for themselves, because they're not taking a stand, because they're just saying yes to everything, they actually become invisible to leadership, right? They become invisible. They just become background noise. This is where people are like, I work so hard. I'm so much smarter than everybody else at my company, but everyone's getting promoted over me. Chances are you are experiencing the mindset of a giver who is not strategic, right? Gives away, I like what Trishan's saying. So the low end giver gives away their ideas and end up helping everybody else progress while leaving themselves behind, I think. You actually got that right on, right? So now let's talk about the strategic giver. What is it that allows this person to still maintain their identity as a giver, as someone who is others focused, but still able to drive higher ends of performance? This person over here, they choose, let me talk over here. This person over here chooses what they give to. So remember, if you were here, when was it? Week 2, I believe, where we did the relationship mapping exercise. We talked about how network can be so overwhelming because maintaining so many relationships is very difficult and it's very draining, and who has the time for it? Now, we did the relationship mapping so that you could strategically see, where do I really need to invest my energy in order to achieve certain goals that I'm looking to achieve, right? So this person is not everywhere all at once. This person is building relationships, but they are choosing who they give that energy to, right? Based on their goals, based on what it is that they are looking to achieve. Again, strategy. They give in ways that build trust without burning out. Earlier last week, we talked about creating stupid people, right? So we talked about the giver leader on this end who burns out because they're constantly solving other people's problems, versus the strategic giver on this end who asks people questions in order to help them gain the confidence that they need to solve their own problems. So they ask what questions? What do you think you should do next? What have you tried so far? What support do you require from me? This person, this giver, is not just about giving someone the answer so that people keep coming back to them. It's about empowering people with the space to learn to trust their own voice, their own instincts, and build their own confidence. Kind of like this giver teaches them fishes for the guy. I remember the parable. This giver over here teaches the guy, actually goes and fishes for the guy. This giver over here teaches the guy how to fish. I butchered that, but you've heard it before. You know where it's coming from, right? I got some few folks in here. Hey, Jay, welcome. Okay, Elza, Mara, nice. Hi, self-healing with Steph. Good to see you. Okay, now, okay, this other giver as well is able to say no with clarity. So we talked last week also about building boundaries, about the ability to strategically say, what do I say yes to and what do I say no to? This giver has the ability to prioritize, to say, I hear that what you want is really important to you. Here's what I've got going on right now. Here's what I've got going on, the other priorities I have. So I can either get to your priority by this date, or let's have a conversation about what needs to come off of my plate, about what needs to be deprioritized. This giver is using those tools versus the other giver who's just like, yeah, sure, I'll get it done. Yeah, sure, I'll get it done. Yeah, sure, I'll get it done. Right? Okay. Sounds like you're giving something different. Exactly. You're giving something different, giving gifts. This person gives the person information to help them to be a part of the decision-making process versus the other giver who's just like, yeah, sure, I'll just get it. Just say yes blindly, right? Now, what am I missing? What am I missing here? So being in control of your yeses and your nos is what helps to ensure that you maintain your power and you are communicating to other people where energy needs to be focused, right? Thank you, Jose. Give a man a fish and he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish and he eats for life. That is such a simple parable. I don't even know why I couldn't get it, but that's why you have friends. That's why you have friends who are brilliant and who can step in and be like, yeah, you did that whack. Let me do it better. Okay, awesome. So now that we're starting to see here, the understanding that overgiving often masks the deeper fear. The reason why people gravitate over to this end of giving, even though this end, we can see how it makes sense, why people gravitate to this end of giving is based on fear. The fear that if I stop saying yes, if I'm not viewed as helpful, am I still going to be valuable? Will the company still see my value? Will my clients still see my value? Will my shareholders still see my value if I'm not being viewed as helpful? And that's why this version of giver is a lot about the identity, how we define what helpful is, what we define support as, and what we define value as. Because how you define those three things will decide which level, which kind of giver you will continuously gravitate towards. Because it takes courage to be a strategic giver. It takes courage to push back. It takes courage to challenge. It takes courage to override that instinctual fear of if you don't, they'll kick you out. This is what takes courage. And too many of us are operating on autopilot versus courage. So, the first giver might have some kind of people-pleasing problems because he wants to be accepted. Absolutely. It could be very much part of it. So you can kind of see how on the surface, as much as we all want to identify, so many of us want to identify as a giver because we, as leaders, we want to be others focused. I know for myself as a coach, as a leader, being others focused is so important to me. The reason that I'm on these lives is because I am others focused, because I'm constantly looking to give value to other people, right? but not doing it, but containing it in such a way where I don't feel burnt out, where I have the energy to come do this day in and day out. So I've given it a container, I've given it boundaries, I've given it parameters. These are just some examples of how someone can still be a giver and be able to have something left over for themselves so that they can grow and scale the impact that they want to have. All right, so this is now the reflection point for you. Where might you be overgiving out of habit, fear, or identity? What would change if you were giving strategically in those areas? What might you gain if you inserted courage where fear takes you gravitating back? What might you gain from the courage to be strategic and use some of these tools that we've been talking about to help you to overcome conversations where fear puts you in the low end of performance, despite how brilliant you are? What conversation or boundary would you need to put in place this week to protect your influence? Okay? What conversation or boundary might you need to influence this week in order to protect your influence? And if you need a quick tutorial on boundaries and tough conversations, the tools are in these lives. Can't remember exactly what episode, but last week we specifically covered boundaries and navigating difficult conversations. Okay? Question I often ask as a leader, is it possible to train your team out of needing your support? Does that happen often? Yes, I'm living proof that it is possible to help your team out of needing your constant support. They will need your support sometimes. As a leader, it's not to say they never will need you, but you start to create a line around what they can manage on their own versus where your skills, your leverage, your relationships, your influence is actually required to help move the needle. So yes, you're not going to necessarily ever be a leader who never needs to support, but being a leader who can who's making sure that people aren't coming to them with the small stuff and taking care of the small problems on their own, and coming to you when it's absolutely necessary, coming to you when they've shown that they've already exhausted a lot of their options, coming to you when they've thought it through already and they're looking for your guidance or your support, because essentially you want to get to that place where you get to spend time being more strategic, and the questions that people are asking you are not based on things that they should know, but the questions that people are asking you are based on information and influence that you have, that you uniquely have due to your position, due to your leadership, and due to your vision. All right. That is it for today. Thank you all for joining. And again, if you're interested in that learning more on the theory of givers and takers, you can add Adam Grant's book, Givers and Takers, to your Amazon list. And please also don't forget to comment book as well so that you can get my book, Be in the Room, added to your Amazon list. Tomorrow is a big day because tomorrow I am bringing on a guest. I am bringing on Lawrence Anthony, who is a speaker and executive coach, and he is going to be breaking down the art of executive presence, the specific tactics that he teaches leaders when leaders are looking to speak and have people lean in, right? So it's going to be about language, it's going to be about posture, it's going to be about presence. So when you enter a room and you have ideas to say and you have thoughts to bring forward, how do you deliver that message so that people lean into you? That's what we're going to be covering tomorrow. Most relatable live so far. I'm so glad. And yes, when the big guns are needed. All right. Thank you all so much for joining. This will get reposted if anyone has missed anything. Always enjoy bringing this knowledge to you. And not everything is going to resonate with where you are right now, but I really hope that you take that reflection away with you today. Where might you be overgiving and how might you pivot that to strategic giving? Okay. because that's really where we want to be. That's where high performance lives. That's where longevity lives. And that's where you create people who will follow you through the fire, right? This is what we want. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you for being in the room with me today and for this whole series. Looking forward to closing out this week with you on a powerful note that brings forward your presence and your brilliance in a way that people cannot avoid you. All right? Oh, quick question. Is the book going to be an audiobook? Yes, the audiobook is going to be available on February 10th. I will let you know that the audiobook is not going to be narrated by me, in case that's what you were looking for. But I was also kind of playing with the idea of maybe doing live readings of certain chapters of the book. I'm playing with it, but maybe if that's something that people want, you can let me know, and I'll see what I can put together there. All right. Awesome. Have a great day.